Good evening. Thank you to humans who've shown up this evening. A warm welcome to AHSS Presents. I think I've got all the letters in the right order and the right amount of letters. Sometimes I add an extra S. This is a conversation with Henry Driver, so hopefully you're in this place expecting Henry Driver. My name's Emily. I'm a digital media production lecturer within this faculty, and we're really excited to have Henry here with us today to talk about encouraging environmental change through art, technology, and games. And I'm going to embarrass Henry with his own CV bio here that's been approved of. It's very enviable, to be fair. So Henry Driver has shown across the world in Berlin, Copenhagen, Montreal, Toronto, Sydney, Melbourne, Seoul, Yokohama, Bangalore, and Taipei. I'm guessing like the rest of the world is just loading still. Also, Henry Driver has shown at Tate Britain, Tate Liverpool, I mean, Tate Modern's, you know, it's their loss, and Barbican. He was selected as one of the top 15 young artists working in the UK. A word I can't pronounce, the Kleinwort, Hambros, Emerging Artist Prize 2019. So you've probably already seen and got the Zoom human that says this is recording when you entered. If you hadn't already noticed, this session will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube. And we've got to get the most hits for this video, no pressure, so please share when it's available. If your cameras are off, you will not feature in this recording and we won't get to see your beautiful faces. So yeah, if you don't want your faces in this video, please could you take your cameras off, but I'd love to see your beautiful faces. If you have any questions, please use the chat function. There'll be time for Q&A after Henry's talk, and that's it from me. It's over to you, Henry, to take the floor.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me just bring up my shared screen. Is that all showing okay?
All good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thank you very much to everyone who's tuning in right now. It's a real pleasure to be invited to speak with you today and share my practice and to discuss these themes. And yeah, once again, thank you for the introduction. I studied BA Fine Art and MA Fine Art at Norwich University Arts. And my kind of aims for my projects are to connect audiences to the environment and to raise awareness for responses to climate change. And that's been my focus for the last 3 years. And previous to that, my practice very much focused on technology and the effects of technology upon us and society. So I'm going to go past and go through some of my material practices and ways of working, and then bring that into some kind of key turning points, collaborations, and commissions. I started my career very much focusing on video, and within that, abstract video, which is textural and almost like a moving painting or animating print. And as I continued to make these, they became kind of started to become more and more microscopic or macroscopic, and having this kind of twin feeling of both looking down at a landscape from afar, but equally possibly, you know, a microscopic material. And that's something to kind of hold on for when I go into my later works. And I'd often display these using multiple screens or creating screen sculptures out of them. Now, another key element of my work, particularly from the beginning, was trying to immerse audiences, whether that's, you know, using multiple screens or using large projections, or kind of combining them, as well as also using scale and projection mapping. So that could be projecting onto multiple walls to create a kind of immersive environment, or likewise to play with projection mapping onto handcrafted sculptures, so that sometimes the sculptures are really prominent, like these kind of pink curly ones here, before then kind of pushing them back with the imagery and covering them and kind of playing with that definition between the virtual and the real. And that was very much a theme that I was interested in earlier in my work. And then the other key practical process is interactivity and game design as art. And that began from distorting video game consoles. So you'd play, say, Mario, and it'd be a real distorted and incredibly different experience, to then creating videos from games. So this is from 007 GoldenEye on the N64, and the project or the piece would repeat the death scene of the blood coming down, but each time it would slowly deteriorate and distort until it eventually fades away. From that, I then learned how to hack and rewrite vintage video games, such as on the Super Nintendo, and created Odyssey, which is on show at Tate Liverpool. And this is an interactive artwork where your task is to reach the mountains and the horizon. But each time you interact, the landscape, the horizon fragments and distorts, and the further you go into it, the more disrupted the environment becomes. And I then upskilled my kind of processes and learned how to create 3D digital worlds using Unity, and to then use these virtual spaces then to create interactive artworks, such as Simulate to Sell, which is on show in Toronto for the Vector Festival. And then also creating virtual reality artworks using those same processes. And a real key project for me, and a kind of key turning point, was Lost Letters from a Lost Generation. This is an interactive artwork or experimental video game, and it's based upon my great-great-uncle's uncensored letters depicting his World War I experience. And these are incredibly powerful and emotional documents which describe his experience. And I found this quite at odds at the time to the depiction of conflict in World War I in video games and films, where it can often be glorified or really commercialized. And I wanted to create an experience based upon his story. You'll explore this desolate black and white World War I landscape, and you'll be guided through his experiences. And it's not, one filled with glory. There's, a failed charge, and then he crawls for ages and spends time just hiding in shell holes, trying not to get blown up. And what was really key about this project is it's my kind of first one where I really had the narrative and the message really explicit in the work. There's a voiceover and there's text throughout. And that's not to say my previous works didn't have a strong concept behind them, but it was always submerged within the work in that kind of artistic manner. And I really liked having the message right in the center and fully on view for audiences. But I was thinking, okay, what's my next project going to be? I was becoming less and less interested in my previous, fascination with technology and the effects upon us. And my aim as an artist is to create projects which deal with pressing and important issues, which create conversations and dialogue, and maybe raise awareness for ways that we can be better at dealing with them. And it was at this point in time that I was increasingly becoming more engaged with the environment and climate crisis. And it seems, okay, well, this is what I should really focus on. It's an element which we really haven't been very good at dealing with it. So maybe this is where I can create projects to try and do a little bit of help. But within that, the environment and climate are such a humongous, complicated topic. And I was thinking, well, where am I going to begin? Where am I going to situate myself? I don't want to blunder in and just do some work which is, someone else has already done far better than me already. And I was thinking, well, is there any kind of narratives or stories or ways of approaching climate change in the environment that haven't been covered or we don't know so much about? And it was around about this time that my family, who are farmers, so my parents, both my brothers, grandfathers are farmers, had been changing the way that they were farming to become carbon negative. And this was in response to, climate change itself. They had, really poor harvests from severe weather. And they were looking to change the way that they farm, to kind of work more with nature in a way that's called regenerative farming, where you regenerate the environment through your practices. And one of the key parts of this is to work with the life buried within the soil, for that to then provide nutrients and food and protection to your crops. And I just thought, well, what life is buried in the soil? And when I came to understand that soil is this vital ecosystem brimming with life, and depending on how we look after our soil and farm our soil, that can sequester and store huge amounts of carbon. And that was the point where I was like, this is the topic I then want to dive into and make the center of my projects. And to gain a greater understanding of what lives in the soil, its interactions with crops, I got in contact with the John Innes Centre in Norwich to meet with researchers, to discuss their research and imagery and gain that greater understanding. And for the project that followed, I in particular worked with Dr. Miriam Charpenter and Dr. Catherine Jacot, kind of visualizing and responding to their research. And that was for Essex County Council at Cressing Temple Barns in Braintree, which are these colossal 800-year-old barns which used to store grains such as wheat, barley, and oats. And I was in residence there for 3 months. And at the end of my time, I was to create an artwork in response to the site. And I created Regenerate, which is a 3-dimensional light box sculpture. On 2 of the sides are close-up imageries of wheat. So that's what used to be stored within these barns. And I wanted to bring it back into them and present it in this way, which makes us really think about it. So, you've got this kind of monolithic like sculpture and it's glowing and you've got these golden grains. I wanted to present wheat and food as something that we should really cherish and not waste. But alongside that, on the other sides of the sculpture, I wanted to think about farming and farming into the future, not just sustainability, but regenerating the environment. And that's where I utilized and created artwork from the John Innes Centre imagery and combined it to create collages, which shows the symbiotic relationships between fungi and so soil-based fungi and crop roots, where they're combined and they're trading nutrients, and the fungi are providing disease protection as well, which all then means you don't have to use as many chemicals, and it's got so many environmental benefits. And then following on from that, I then created a video which explored that further for Science Gallery India. And these were really key projects for me because they're my first time of real collaboration with scientists and responding to research, as well as also researching into industries, working with farmers to think about how can we change these practices, how are you doing it, and understanding that. So it was a massive turning point. But looking back on them, there's many things that I would do differently. And one of the key issues was the message. They're a sculpture or a video, but how do you understand that concept behind the work? To get it, you have to read the kind of accompanying text and textual light bulbs, which explained the work further. And that's not so good. I wanted to create, for my next project, to have that meaning and that message really embedded into the experience, so that as you experience the artwork, you're understanding this landscape. But equally, I was continually realizing that while I researched this further, that this is only a really tiny glimpse of what lives in the soil and its interactions. So I needed a medium which could really visualize that to audiences. And that's what led me to create Secrets of Soil, which is commissioned by BBC Arts and Arts Council England as part of the New Creators programme. Secrets of Soil is an interactive digital journey that explores the hidden world of soil and its role in combating climate change. I'm just going to get out the trailer now.
Soil is alive. It's truly the city that never sleeps. Millions of life forms tirelessly interacting and creating fertility in our beautiful soil. Continued life itself on this planet is utterly dependent on these microorganisms. Except, we are in danger of wrecking this underground galaxy.
You'll explore the microscopic landscape to uncover the life forms that live there and the vital functions that they undertake. You'll meet bacteria, nematodes, protozoa, and fungi. And key to the work was changing the way that audiences think differently about the soil. That soil isn't dirt and rocks, but it's this ecosystem that is full of life that we rely on for, not just 95% of our food, but for, essential parts in medicine. So it's all about kind of opening up that ecosystem to audiences, and, because how can you care about something if you don't know it, if you can't see it, if you can't, that was the real aim of, or one of the essential aims of the work, was to reveal that hidden ecosystem. But alongside that, I wanted to explore the effects and possibilities of farming upon this landscape, to visualize to audiences the effects of intensive farming upon this ecosystem, but also allow audiences to interact and regenerate the soil through changes to farming practices, to show that we can bring this ecosystem back to life. And through that, we can sequester huge amounts of carbon. And at the end of the experience, it finishes with a link to activities that you could do at home to kind of look after soil. Once again, I worked with the John Innes Centre researchers and support staff who were incredibly helpful and supportive of the projects. Both at the start by providing those, sharing their research and imagery to kind of really build up this image of this world, but also for kind of script advice and thinking about how to communicate it. Alongside that, I consulted with farmers for their views and experiences on intensive farming and regenerative farming practices. And in terms of audience, I was trying to get this out to as many people as possible. So on one hand, I could view it as being an experience which, say, a farmer or a farmer who's already thinking about regenerative farming or doing it could then experience it and go, that's the world that I'm building and looking after and working with, to also the general public enjoying it and various sectors within that, such as tech, games, arts, science, education. Because as a piece, I feel that it brings together various different elements. On one hand, it's an interactive artwork. On the other, it's an experimental video game or an educational video or a kind of scientific experience or a real audio-visual experience. And the piece is available in two different forms. So there's a fully interactive version that you can download for free off Steam, and that'll run on a Windows computer. But if you don't have that or the necessary graphics card, there's also a 360-degree video version on YouTube, which will run on mobiles, tablets, and browsers. So you can, say, use your device to then pan around and explore the world. And if you'd like to access it, you can scan the QR code on the left to go to the BBC article, or type in the little bit link to go straight to the 360 one, or just search Steam for it. Now, rather than continue to talk about it, I thought it'd be really great to actually have a little playthrough of it and talk a bit through some of my designs and processes for creating it. And this is the fully interactive version.
Soil. It produces 95% of our food. But what does healthy soil look like? Isn't it just rocks and dirt? No. Soil is alive. It's truly the city that never sleeps. Teeming, buzzing, evolving. Millions of life forms tirelessly interacting and creating fertility in our beautiful soil. Continued life itself on this planet is utterly dependent on these microorganisms. Except, we are in danger of wrecking this underground galaxy. But, buried within the soil, is the power to help save us from ourselves and our self-inflicted climate disaster. Explore. When you are ready to continue your soil odyssey, press the X key or button.
And one element of inspiration for the piece, I think certainly comes from my early experiences of video games and how that they can transport you into an amazing virtual world. You know, I remember playing Super Mario 64 and Zelda: Ocarina of Time and just being blown away by that. And I wanted to kind of capture some of that real window into another world, but instead of that being a fantasy world, to open up a world that's been under our feet every single day of our lives that we just haven't seen.
In this city of 1 trillion life forms, 1 teaspoon of soil contains 1 billion bacteria. These minuscule beings have been working their magic for 4 billion years, and yet we still have so much to learn and gain from them.
Throughout the piece, I wanted to add interactions or ways that the audience could change the environment. But alongside that, one of the main elements of the work is exploration and exploring these environments and the microscopic landscape. But I wanted to add a way that the world can change based on that. As you see in this scene, as you move around, the colors and aesthetic of the world shift and change. And depending on how you navigate, it can be quite a different experience. And that's just one element of a kind of playful, I suppose, creative interaction that I added in to just make it so that the world is responding to you and just responding to that exploration.
Bacteria break down dead plant and animal matter into essential nutrients. Nutrients which eventually refresh, restore, and revive the soil. Their magic contribution is to recycle waste and turn it into goodness. They create the womb from which new life can thrive and prosper in the cradle of the soil.
So the aesthetics and the visuals are inspired by the microscopic imagery that I was responding to. And a lot of it was really vibrant and fluorescent. You saw some of the imagery from Regenerate. And I wanted to really embrace that aesthetic for the work because it seemed so at odds to perhaps what I was expecting from the soil. That might be all earthy texture and quite bland. And to really utilize that bright and really saturated style. Alongside that, there's quite a few sections where things are kind of see-through or transparent. And that's very much in response to that microscopic element that you're looking and seeing through things and matter. one of the elements which was particularly tough with the work was working out the scales and the scale of bringing the world together. So you've got bacteria, which are various sizes, other microorganisms, fungi, and then you've got the plant roots, and tying those all together in a way which is vaguely scientifically correct but also works as an experience was really tough, and is definitely an element I'd probably change and work further on for a future project.
Life in Soil City is never quiet. It's a super fast, high capacity 3D network where plants and bacteria message and exchange critical data with one another 24/7. Plants send out chemical signals to attract the bacteria they need to help them grow and resist harm. The bacteria provide food, antibiotics, or toxins to help the plants protect themselves. Plants, in turn, suck carbon out of the air to feed the bacteria. Like nations making trade deals, they work together so that both parties survive and thrive. But as their needs evolve, so plants hurl out urgent messages for new aid. More and more bacteria respond, and the whole network blazes into a wild symphony of interaction. Why not conduct this symphony yourself? Press the X key or button.
So this is another example of where I wanted to provide that ability for the audience to make a difference on the environment and have an impact on this virtual environment. And to do it in quite a playful and creative way, but to have quite a meaningful and real obvious impact on it. Where they're kind of changing the signals that the plants are releasing, and then hence that then changes the bacteria which are around.
Can you see the glowing exchange points inside the root? Navigate your way through them to activate them.
So I've skipped through a little bit, and that's to show another one of the kind of interactive elements. And what was key throughout the work was to provide these opportunities for the audience to change and have an impact on the environment. And that's what I really wanted to stress throughout the work, and which was really key. When you're dealing with these environmental themes, I really wanted to give a sense to the work that we can make a difference, that yes,
can you see the glowing exchange
we can
points?
have a negative impact on the environment, but there are things that we can do, that farming can change, and that we can make little changes as well, which can help.
Inside the root. Now, there. That's what you did. Plant and fungi merging together to create a marketplace, trading nutrients and food. Activate the other exchange points.
And I wanted to have them in ways that, the interaction to trigger them wasn't complicated, but as I said before, they have quite drastic effects on the landscape. And as you progress further into it, you then also have the opportunity to regenerate some desolate soil later on, and you get to see the impact of regenerative farming and how it can sequester and store lots of carbon. So it's all about visualizing the impacts that we can have.
Look at the symbiosis you have created. Plant and fungi living as one, working and thriving together. But there's more to this deal than meets the eye. Fungi repay the plants by weaving spidrous networks around the roots. Some even provide antibiotics. The strength of their bond protects them from lurking pathogens and parasites. They've gone all the way and tied the knot. They are true soil mates.
And for elements of the work, for kind of visualizing, it it was quite easy. You know, I had a lot of imagery that I could respond to, such as for protozoa and some of the microorganisms. But for some of the other elements, it was really difficult. Like, how do you visualize nutrients being exchanged between fungi and crop roots, or how plants and bacteria communicate? And that's where it was really key for me to have a real playful period of R&D, just making and having fun trying to generate this microscopic environment and creating different ways of visualizing it, and to trigger things through the process by just doing things wrong or pushing something up to 10 and combining it the wrong way. It was through that real playful process that a lot of parts of the scenes were generated, because when I think about soil and what I uncovered from the research, it just seems like such an amazing universe filled with so much wonder that I tried and wanted the visuals to try and do it justice, and to continually hopefully surprise the audience. And that's why quite a lot of the scenes differ in their kind of visual styling, as I wanted it to kind of feel like you're continuously going through this, you know, this landscape which has so much depth to it, and you're only getting a little glimpse of it. But anyway, I've shown like a selection of some of the scenes, some of the key scenes. There's still plenty more in the experience to explore. So if you want to check it out, please do. You know, there's still, I haven't shown any of the stuff which is to do with kind of the effects of farming and also regenerating the environment. But anyway, I'm going to close it now and hand it back over to Emily.
Awesome, thank you for that. I'm biased, I've come across your work before. I think I came across your work first at the MA show, and it's just really exciting seeing how your practice has developed in these 3D environments, no pun intended, have helped you level up. I felt like I could get one pun in because there were a few in your presentation. That leads me into my first question. Before I reveal that, if anyone has any questions, if you want to pop them in the chat, or we can do virtual hands up, and if you're comfortable speaking on a microphone, knowing that your beautiful face will be in the recording on YouTube, just to add that sort of spoiler. I'll give you a minute to think about that. So I'm going to go with the first question, which is, what has the impact of using a games engine been on your practice? And it's so lovely to see someone using Unity. Just going to put that one there.
It's really kind of opened up the possibilities of what I could create. So previously, if I was trying to make an immersive environment, I'd be using screens and projections, and you've got so many limitations with that, you know, both in budget and space, and also you end up making something which is site specific. So when you try and take it to another space, you've almost got to redesign elements of it again. So when I started to work with games engines, it really opened up a way of exploring those, but also then visualizing so many things. So that's been so exciting for my practice. And with Unity, it was, you know, it's a free software, and there's so many tutorials and resources online. It's been something which is, you're continually learning again and again, more and more stuff. So I think that's one element is, you know, what drew me to work with technology was that it's evolving. There's always lots of developments to respond to, both in a practical sense as also the effects of it. And that continues within when you're working with game design. You know, before Secrets of Soil, I worked on TO for Collusion, and that was on the 2017 version of Unity. And then I hadn't really done any more projects on it since, and I moved to the most recent one, and it's just like, there's so many more opportunities and things to create and exciting new things to do. So that's one thing that's really exciting.
Awesome. Just for any games engine humans, other games engines are available. I'm not biased. Has anyone got any other questions? Otherwise I've got plenty. Henry knows I've got plenty. I'll move on to the next one. From the intro, people probably gathered you're quite a global human, and I wondered, how has being a digital practitioner enabled you to have a global practice, and has this helped you out being a digital human working during lockdown?
It's been hugely helpful throughout all of my career. From the start, it allowed me to find curators and festivals who were interested in the kinds of work that I was creating. And at that time, right at the start, that was in Australia. It's at channels and televisions who were interested in kind of abstract video. So I wouldn't have been able to get my work there or find them without the internet. So it's been hugely helpful for that. Likewise, I was incredibly lucky to be able to work on Secrets of Soil through lockdown. So that was, it was nice to be able to focus on that. That's really lucky. But also going forward, it's just been lovely to, release Secrets of Soil, and then immediately there's a real in-depth review in Russian, or it's being picked up by curators in Istanbul or other places. So that's just been fantastic. And I really want to continue to open my work up to global audiences, but also make the work more accessible. I know that's something which really needs to be improved, but that's what I'm looking forward to increasing for future projects.
It's awesome. I think it's probably good that you started working with early games consoles early in your career, given their extreme popularity, it seems, during lockdown. It'd be much harder to get hold of some of those consoles now. Any humans here have any questions? I honestly do have a massive list, so please feel free. Oh, go for it, Tina.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for joining us. I work with Emily. I'm a course leader for the digital media production course at Anglia Ruskin, and find the kind of work you're showing being really exciting. And funnily enough, we're about to start a project with our first years, actually, that is around sustainability and kind of the disaster that we're facing. And I just wondered whether, if you had to give some advice to them about how to approach the project, would you take would you give them the same advice that you took yourself, which was to go and get informed and look at some of the research, or how would you approach it if you were them?
That's a good question. I think absolutely you want to find the areas which you're then going to focus on and really kind of embed yourself in that and work with specialists to kind of open up those subject areas. Alongside that, then you can then start to bring that into some of the design and to the, the makeup of the piece or the interactive work or the game, in a sense, so that you're not using a gameplay or a means of interaction which is at odds with the topic or what you're trying to explore. But alongside that, kind of look into sustainability or even design options within the game. So you might want to make it not that long an experience, or use lower resolution graphics so it's not energy intensive, or look at ways of kind of going about in terms of sustainability of the production itself, which with digital we can sometimes forget about, that there are emissions kind of going from various different points. So I think it's a kind of holistic approach of exploring sustainability in every single segment, and it's difficult, but if you start now and start at the beginning, it will be it'll really help.
I really liked what you said before. You said it several times actually about being playful and playing around, and I think that can be quite a difficult thing especially for people that are just starting out in their careers, that have come from school in particular, where it's been knocked out of them because they're so afraid of failing, that can be a really big issue. So I really appreciate that you talking about playing with things and actually just kind of to some extent just kind of playing with the technology and seeing what happened. I think that's a really fantastic part.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, my best works are all mistakes or things when things have broken. So that's 100% well, for me, I've absolutely loved embracing, and that's how every time I find something exciting, it's from doing that and really playing around and not being worried. I suppose my key thing is, don't be worried about doing something the wrong way or not doing something the accepted way, because at the end, that's how everyone innovates and finds something new and creates something.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Has anyone got a question that follows the best thing to do is make a mistake? Go for it, Kirk.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for the presentation. It's really beautiful work. Can you talk a little bit about the commissioning process? So how did you end up working together with BBC Arts, and how has that gone? I hate to ask the horrible question, but has it actually paid for your time?
Thank you very much for the kind words and for coming along tonight. It was a lengthy process. So they were set into 3 different strands. There was new creatives, film, sound, and interactive, kind of half supported by BBC Arts, and then the other half Arts Council England, with varying different sizes of budgets. And it was a much more hands-on commissioning process. I had producers, and there's a real constant dialogue throughout the process with the producers, both from BBC end as well as also producers brought in by the BBC. It took a while to do it. It was incredibly insightful, and I learned a huge amount through it. It was a very much positive experience for me. There's bits when I was in the middle of it, I might have thought, oh, this is quite a bit. But no, it was a good amount of money, a good budget for this. That didn't stop me from being perhaps too ambitious at points, or perhaps doing elements which I maybe should have not. But it's something that I definitely keep an eye on for practitioners and students, is because I'm hoping that they might do it again, and because there's been some really fantastic works come out of it. And the whole aim was to provide a platform for young creators to share their stories of the country as it is, or whatever. So yeah, positive, but also was complicated at times, and yeah, I learned a lot.
Sounds like the majority of commissions, to be honest. So if anyone's got any questions, remember you can pop it in the chat if you're not happy or comfortable taking your microphone or putting your microphone on. Oh, we have a question from CJ. Do you find yourself having difficulty disseminating good information or research that fits your needs from, say, information with bias? Do you feel like you need to take a neutral stance with how you approach your research project? Oh, that sounds like a good question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, one that I came up with within this project is to really take in a variety of views. And at some points the script was a little bit too anti-intensive farming, but we've got to acknowledge that those the Green Revolution and chemicals have provided huge amounts of food which have supported populations and reduced famine, etc. But equally, that we need to improve, and we can do better, and we can change and update. So there's really that balance of at one hand having a strong message and showing that yes, we can change and there are things that we need to change, but to be understanding of either side and the reasons why we did things in the past and why we might do things in the future. And yes, some of the things might then change again. So yeah, it's difficult. Definitely. The BBC called it very much a political piece. And I had to pull back some of the initial writing around it. I thought it's just going to create a little bit too much. And in terms of the first part of the question, that's the part where it was really key for me to then speak to specialist researchers, to consult publications, as well as also then, chat with industry, with farmers, to then get their view of both sides of it, and etc. And that will then make it easier for yourself, so that you don't blunder in or do something, because it can be very easy to do that. So yeah, I definitely suggest trying reaching out to organizations, and John and Centre were really supportive, and I'm sure other ones will be as well, to kind of help spread their research and understandings.
Good. Oh, got another question, go for it, Kirk.
There's a long history of art science collaborations. Quite a few of them have been supported by the Wellcome Trust in the past. And one of the big questions which usually comes out of them is, what do the scientists get out of it? Quite often the artists get access to their research, they get access to their facilities, they get access to their images. So how did you work together with the scientists? And did you have any discussions about why they were engaging with you and what they were hoping to get?
So to initiate it, I contacted them and basically kind of saw it as evolved, created the Regenerate project, and then got in contact again. And then I was, trying to be very understanding of the time restraints and that they're doing this, as you were mentioning, in terms of what are they getting out of it? Well, I suppose if I was trying to, I'd say, well, it raises awareness for their research or it gets it out to various different parts of industry. But it is, in a sense, it is a difficult question, absolutely, of perhaps that exchange. But I think a lot of the researchers were really happy and excited by that idea of then taking their research, then kind of sharing it and discussing it with me, and then creating something which is sharing their ideas. So a lot of them are really passionate about the soil and how we need to improve how we use it, but also looking forward that we can't farm how we are because we're going to, really bring the environment down and then start to suffer. So it's that kind of, I think that they were quite happy to then be part of that process, to then share that research and raise that awareness on these topics, which, that they're passionate about, but then perhaps aren't getting such public exposure to. So, but absolutely, it's a really good question and a difficult one. And yeah, going forward, that to make it a much more reciprocal, but hopefully it has been. They join in the centre of scenes really like it and share it a lot, so hopefully.
Oh, I've just seen in the chat the host computer is about to restart and they cannot delay it. We may lose connection. Could either myself or another human in the call be made the host so that if that computer gets taken down, we're not all taken down with it? That would be awesome. And before that, there was another question from, forgive me if I'm going to pronounce this wrong, is it Nifi or Nifi? What is the message for world leaders and delegates at COP26, which is the UN climate change conference, I believe, which is happening right now in Glasgow? So what messages would you have for those world leaders that would be there?
I think there's no one way that we're going to get ourselves out of this. It's a real holistic and combined approach of various different things and improving different things. And that's why I was drawn to farming, because it's an element which is, emits quite a lot and has various different environmental issues related to it. And that's just one segment of where, yes, you can regenerate ecosystems and increase biodiversity and also store carbon, etc. And that can then help us. And it's kind of, you can make these changes quite quickly. It does take a transition period to get your farming to be the same, roughly the same yields or profitability, but it's something that can be done now in comparison to some infrastructure projects, which can be a lot longer. So it's basically, I'd say about, enacting things and taking your chances with these things and going ahead and perhaps not always. So yeah, it's the combination, basically. That would be my way of approaching it, or my message, I suppose.
Awesome. So I think we've got time for like one or two more questions. If anyone else has got any questions, pop one in the chat or on your microphone. One question I'm keen, so we do have some students here with us, how you made that leap from, you said did you go straight from undergrad to postgrad, or did you have a gap?
Yeah, so I was planning to go straight from BA and then be like, I'll just be a professional artist. And I was getting to the end of my degree and just thought I really don't have some of the understanding. So that's when I did a 1 year master's afterwards, but you wouldn't have to do that. There's other ways that you could have approached it, but I wanted to have the university there to learn some skills, specifically sculpture and actually games design further, because there are things that I'd only really touched upon later on. So I thought, oh, having that extra year to do that and have that support would really help me. But that's not to say it would be the same for other people, but there's other routes. But carry on, Emily.
So it was more, how did you go about building that network? So how did this gallery in Sydney find you, in India and around the world? How did you go about making that happen from graduating to seamlessly global impact?
Social media research, going online and trying to find those places or organizations or curators who seem to be interested in the same kind of work I was creating, or a similar vibe or atmosphere or concept. And that was how I found them. But also before that, I'd been kind of submitting to like local shows. I tried to find out what's the local art scene like and get in with, apply for work. So then I had a couple of things on my CV and to kind of go from there. That's what happened. I did a show in Norwich with Savour, and it just so happened a London-based curator was in there, and then the work was screened in London, and then I was approached Channels. They had an open call and did it there. So it's having these little things in your CV, but then also doing that research to just find these opportunities, because they're out there. There's people out across the world who I'm sure will be interested in your projects. It's just finding the right space for them and building a little bit of stepping stones to get to them as well.
Pretty awesome. Social media being used for good. Always refreshing. So I think this will probably be the last question from CJ, because I'm aware of time and we've got you for an hour. So you've done quite a lot in terms of varied creative output. How long did it take you to nail down what you wanted to do? Would you consider yourself still learning, still growing as a creative? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And absolutely, I would say I'm still learning every single day. And I will continue to learn and develop throughout the whole career. And in terms of, it has been varied, and perhaps that could almost be sometimes a negative. I haven't specialized perhaps as much as some other practitioners. I do audio-visual work as well. And, there's that combination of interactive and other ones. But I feel like I'm becoming a bit more specialized now as I kind of work out some of the, I suppose, routes to audience, but also what I want to achieve or try and do. So I kind of always, I suppose, after I graduated, I wanted to have projects which I thought were, had an impact and stuff. But then it's taken me 5 years to then, okay, well, what's my concept's going to be, and how am I actually going to reach people? And that's one of the things that's been key for me with this project, is actually promoting it and getting it out to journalists and press and various groups from various different sizes to actually see the work. So that's been really important for me. But it's a long process, and I'm sure I'm probably going to change it again. It was only earlier in the week I was thinking, maybe I'd quite like to do a public artwork again. That would be really good. So it's kind of evaluating those things you want to achieve. And for me, I really love creating digital artworks and having that wide audience base and hopefully availability. But I'm also still interested in that, public just coming across the work in a public space, and it just being there. So that's my kind of central ways I'm going forward, I think, in terms of production and along those kind of conceptual themes that I've discussed earlier.
Seems like a nice way to end, with my dog now whining for food. With that idea of that you keep learning, keep innovating, but most of all, keep playing. So that leaves me to, whilst my dog is whining and hoping and crossing fingers that my microphone's not picking it up, just to say thank you, Henry, for your time and sharing that, and so thank you for all coming along this evening. I know another Zoom call in your diary maybe isn't your best way or idea of spending a Thursday evening, so thank you very much, and thank you all for your questions. And I think that's all that's left to do is, we can all give like a virtual round of applause to Henry.
thank you very much for everyone who attended. It's been really great to discuss and chat to you all.